welcome to the Steelers Burning Question, brought to you by BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 1-3 going into this week's pivotal Week 5 matchup against arch rival from the AFC North, those Baltimore Ravens, and in my mind, one of the best rivalries in not only the National Football League, but all of sports. I think this is just a fantastic rivalry. It's getting pretty close to 25 years now. If you're officially going to count it, when the Baltimore Ravens came into existence officially after moving from Cleveland in September of 1996 is what it was. I believe at the time, Vinny Testaverde was the very first quarterback that the Steelers ever faced as of taking on the Baltimore Ravens. So with that being said, I welcome you. This is the Burning Question. This is a departure for me. Usually I'm here with Tony Defio on the Steeler Hangover on Mondays, or I'm here with Jeff Hartman or Dave Schofield of Behind the Steel Curtain. That's our editor and deputy editor as well. And we do the preview on Thursday night. I could be seen from time to time anywhere else, and check out all of our other podcasts. We have so many. Lance Williams. I'm not going to make up a catchy name for Lance. I believe he renamed me Brian B. Davis. I don't know whether that's because of the 50th anniversary of the Brady Bunch, or maybe I'm just B talent, which I'm more like C- talent, but I'm cool with that. But Lance also has a few podcasts as well. You can check it out here. So many things to check out on the network of Behind the Steel Curtain, and glad to hear from you. So we're going to start off with the burning question of the week. And for me, it's no longer, it's can the Steelers go ahead and can they sustain the mojo after the win? I kind of think they could sustain the mojo. It's just, the level of talent that they played, being the Cincinnati Bengals, who are an 0-4 team and have a line that is just very penetrable. But the Steelers did look like they did turn a corner on defense as well. You just want to see what is going to happen with Mason Rudolph. If they take the reins off him a little bit, let him test that live arm that he has, that would be the big thing. So the question is, at 1-3 and officially one game back in the division, what is the official threat level for the Pittsburgh Steelers going into this game? So, like I said just before, if they go ahead and win this game, they are going to be sitting at 2-3, and that's nothing that you jump up and down about. But if they're at 2-3, they have a possibility after the Monday night game to be tied for the division lead. And actually, at that point, with the division record, with the they would probably be, not probably, they would be tops in that division at that time if Cleveland would fall to a San Francisco 49er team that is not only 3-0, but playing at home where they are a lot tougher. So that would be a great Monday Night Football matchup, but that does not matter. The only thing that matters for me and for many of Steeler Nation, and especially Mike Tomlin and the players on that roster, is just this. It's the Baltimore game and Baltimore only. Now, Ray Lewis isn't coming to town. No T-Sizzle. It's no Ed Reed. You're not seeing that, but you're seeing a new incarnation. And just the fact that they're wearing white, black, and purple kind of means that that hatred is still there. That was brought up this week as well by Baltimore players about the rivalry. But you know what? It's not just one of hatred. It's one of respect, too. These players respect each other greatly. And I think that's something that you can see when they play. But the rivalry is so deep that the hatred exists no matter who's on the field. So this is the first time in ages. I would actually say this is the first time since 2010 that you will not see Ben Roethlisberger and Joe Flacco on the field as well. So that's something really interesting. So what is the threat level? So if we look at the Homeland Security Advisory, we can start at the bottom. Green is low, of course. Blue is guarded. Yellow is elevated. Orange is high. And red is severe. Now, we're coming off a situation where they did get a win. They're off the schneid finally, and they seem to be playing better with a little bit of innovation. But before they brought out that innovation, one thing that I noticed was they weren't running the ball too well at all in a traditional backfield. It was less James Conner and more of the offensive line not creating any openings for that team. So that's something that I found really disconcerting. So what I'm asking is, where are we as a threat level? My answer to that is probably that I'm not going to go as far as say red and severe, but I'm thinking it's orange. It's a very high threat level because if you lose this game to Baltimore, then they are top of the division at this point. They are going to be 3-2, where they would be at, and Pittsburgh would be at 1-4, and not just 2 games behind, but you're also behind in that tiebreaker as well at that certain point. So that's almost 3 games behind. And at week 5, nothing's insurmountable, but that's pretty tough. So you really gotta get this win. I'm not saying that it is going to end their season, but it's going to severely cripple that season. Now we're seeing different colors show up. Some people were saying blue. So they're saying that at this point that it's not as big of a deal. But for me, you're looking at a situation here where you really can't afford to slip way behind. If this was a situation that they were 2-2 going into this game, I would feel a whole heck of a lot better. Now, we've seen it in the past. We have seen a Pittsburgh Steelers team at 1-3 go to the playoffs, and that was 2002. That was a situation when you didn't have your regular starter, but Tommy Maddox came in week 3 and rescued the team from an 0-3 record. And the next week they lost in New Orleans. Then after that, cut fire. It was a magical season for Tommy Gunn. That 2002 team is a really fun team. They lost after winning the wild card game against Cleveland, and then lost in a very questionable way in overtime against the Tennessee Titans. And I'm trying to remember his name, and I'm going to say Rob Baronis, maybe? Was it Rob Baronis that was the kicker at the time for Tennessee? I might be wrong on that. That's something I probably should have checked beforehand, but actually just popped on my head, so that's why I'm bringing it up. But he did a little bit of a flop when Dwayne Washington came in trying to block that kick. They had a chance to go ahead and kick again, and next thing you know, they are on their way to the AFC Championship game, where they would ultimately lose to the Raiders. But it's very special year nonetheless. We've also seen situations where the Steelers have gone 0-4 and barely missed the playoffs, and that was most recently as of the 2013 season when they lost in London to the Minnesota Vikings to fall down to 0-4. Le'Veon Bell's rookie year. And Dave Schofield just helped me out here, and it's Joe Nedney, and that's really correct. That is correct. In fact, I believe Rob Baronis, might be the late son-in-law of Terry Bradshaw, who passed away a few years ago. I believe that was a car accident. But if I'm not mistaken, I think that was I know he was a Tennessee Titan kicker, and I believe Baronis was related to Bradshaw marrying one of his daughters. But I digress. I'm starting to think that really is Joe Nedney at this point. But what I'm talking about here is, it's possible to be this far down. We even saw it just a few years ago in 2016 when they reached the AFC Championship game. They were at 4-5 with 7 games to go after dropping that heartbreaker to the Dallas Cowboys. And I remember being on the Steelers Hangover at the time when it was hosted by Jeff Hartman, and I was new to podcasting at the time. And I was on there with him, and we both we were teetering, but we weren't ready to give up on that team yet. So it's really a situation where no one's saying give up on this team. And no one's saying that the win against the Cincinnati Bengals was not, paramount. I mean, it was huge. But I'm still going to, ascertain that you really can't go ahead and put a label on this team until you see really what happens against a team like the Baltimore Ravens. They are a lot stronger than Cincinnati. Now, there are some naysayers that say, hey, look, Baltimore's not as good as you think. I disagree. I think Baltimore is a very dangerous team. Lamar Jackson, if he's on, he will murder you. He is that good when he is on. But he also has the chance to get rattled and to fall apart. And the receiving core, you have Miles Boykin on that team. You have Willie Snead. You have Hollywood Brown, Marquise Hollywood Brown, who was their first round draft pick this year. But, for me, I just don't think that's really a team that just puts, that ultimate fear into you. So as far as the receiving core, what I really am concerned with, and something they did so much better, is against the run. And that was last week, where they really held down Joe Mixon, and Mixon really couldn't get anything going. You have a situation where you've got Mark Ingram, who is going about 6 yards a carry at this point, and it's over 6 yards a carry. And then you have Lamar Jackson, who's really phenomenal with his legs as well. So you have that threat that he's going to pass. You have the threat that he's going to run it. But the nice thing, though, if you look back, and I know I'm teetering, but I'm trying to bring this all out of. You have experience against who I think is one of the best dual threats in the league, and that's still Russell Wilson, who I think is having a fantastic year so far. If you saw what he did the other night in the Thursday night game against the Rams, I think he's having a phenomenal year. Only let that guy get free, he killed you. And that was against the Steelers. And in week 2, they were shadowing him. They were containing him for the most part. But there was a couple times where he just shredded him. And that was on a lot of third downs. And that's something you can't get to a situation when you're 3rd and long and 3rd and 15 and 3rd and 11, like we saw against San Francisco, and 3rd and forever. I think it was like 3rd and 17 against Seattle. And but Steelers defense has greatly improved, and it's basically because of you now have Minkah Fitzpatrick in there. You have a guy like Devin Bush who's in that game, but he's able to sideline. He has the speed to maybe shadow a running quarterback like that as well. So, there's some situations that you really have a much better defense than you had just 3 weeks ago. Quan Chapman brings up in the live chat that, we didn't have Minkah Fitzpatrick back in that game. And when you think about the Cincinnati game, you didn't hear Minkah's name that much, and you didn't hear Terrell Edmunds' name that much. And for me, that's fantastic, because you don't really want to hear the names of the secondary unless they're intercepting a pass. And they neutralized some pretty good wide receivers. For my money, I think Tyler Boyd and I think John Ross III are good receivers. John Ross is really coming on, and they didn't have to face a guy like it's fantastic. They didn't have to face a guy like AJ Green, but the corners, Steven Nelson, Joe Hayden, even number 28, Mike Hilton, he was really standing out as well. So that defense seems a little more solidified. So that's something that I need to feel, that I'm feeling a lot better about. There are some people saying that, this is still an average football team. This is an average football team right now, But we've seen average football teams start off poorly and go ahead and go all the way to the playoffs and even further. Um, you know, it has been brought up on the live chat as well that the Dolphins had Minka Fitzpatrick. Michael Toole brings that up, and Brown toasted him. But that's a different situation. He had nobody around him as well. He was playing 4 different positions in that game too. The Steelers are a lot better than the Miami Dolphins, especially on defense. This is a team that's on the rise. But what is the most important thing for the Steelers as well? And when you look at the fact that the defense seems to be coming together, they need to have a plan, and they obviously have a plan because they're thinking about it. And what a lot of people don't give credit for on defense is the fact that Mike Tomlin is taking this game to game. And he brought a guy in like Christian from, I believe, he was from South Dakota, and he was with the Dallas Cowboys in training camp. He is a very mobile running quarterback. I have a lot in the mold. When I say the mold, he doesn't have the talent of a guy like Lamar Jackson, but he was able to be on that scout team this week and on that practice squad for them to be able to prepare. So that's something that they're looking at, and that's something that they have a plan on defense, and that's what we've asked for all along on offense and defense. We just need them to have a plan. So I would love to see it. What is the plan going to be? I don't want to know it because I don't want them leaking it. But I have a feeling it's going to be a lot of shadowing, and they're going to try to do whatever they can to go ahead and take away that running game, take away Ingram, take away Lamar Jackson. But also, there's one more guy that I want to bring up on this team that you might not even know who he is, but it's a two-way player named Patrick Ricard. He's, I believe, number 42, if I'm not mistaken. He's a fullback, and he also plays on the defensive line. This guy, I'm telling you, this guy is dangerous because, in short yardage situations, he could go ahead and take the rock and move it ahead for a first down, but he opens up a lot of holes for these guys. And on defense, he clogs a lot of things up, and he's able to get to the runner. So a very good double threat there too in Patrick Ricard. So that's a guy you want to look out for tomorrow if you're not that familiar with him. So, that's what has to be done on defense. But offense, that's the thing. This is where the plan is going to be really interesting. A lot of people, the fear is that if they just go into a situation when they're just relying on the Wildcat like crazy, that they're not going to be able to thrive. Look, what a lot of people don't realize is this team only ran that Wildcat 7 times. Only 7 times from that formation in the Cincinnati game. I know it seemed like a whole lot more, but they didn't do it. Just 7 times. So they didn't rely on it the whole game. They need to bring the Wildcat back. Do not put it on the shelf. But also, don't get yourself into a position where they're going to be able to sniff it out. Because good coaches can do that. I mean, you're not going to be able to put stuff on tape for a guy like Bill Belichick. Really, you're not going to be able to put stuff on tape for a guy like Martindale and John Harbaugh, because these guys, they're already preparing for it. I mean, the minute they saw it, in fact, I'm sure they saw it in the second quarter of that game, and they were already working something up. That's what this team does. But if you execute it well, you mix it in, and you go ahead and you get a little more deeper on those balls. You throw deep to a guy like Deontay Johnson, who can stretch the field. Johnny Holton can stretch the field. You have to do stuff like that. You also have James Washington, who you really need to get back into play as well. And we still don't know how much Juju Smith-Schuster is going to play in this game. He's a guy that really needs to carry this team as far as wide receivers go. But, the problem is that toe's been bugging him just since the beginning of the year. It's bugging him a whole lot more, and so you might not see him. So we'll see how well these guys can step up, these young guys on offense. especially the wide receiving weapons. And, you're not going to like this, but you might see some Dante Moncrief in this game as well. And I know there are collective good griefs going on throughout all of BTSC land when I say something like that. But you know what? What it's brought up by getting bent with Bo, Creef is a good player. He'd like to see anyone catch balls with messed up fingers, is what Bo says. Maybe Moncrief could have a game, get a chance to get in there and show off what he can do. Because he has been written off after 2 games. So there might be a possibility that you are going to see him if Juju can't go. Johnny Holton, Cree mentions that Johnny Holton isn't reliable, but he does stretch the field a little bit. And, I made a comment about that the other night, and either Jeff or Dave brought it up that, hey, at least they're throwing it out there, trying to stretch the defense a little bit. And if it works, it works. If you get a flag, and they did get a flag, but it just went against the wrong guy at that point. Another thing to bring up as far as weapons for Moncrief, excuse me, for Mason Rudolph would be somebody like Nick Vannett. And if he's healthy, number 89, Vance McDonald, my guy, the Vanimal. If he's healthy and you have 2 tight end sets, that could be very dangerous because they can be very tough to deal with. So what is going to be the plan on offense? I think if we're looking at the number 1 priority is to go ahead and get the run going. You just really have to go ahead and hope that those big guys up front can open up some holes, so you're not resorting to the Wildcat as much. You're still going to use it, but you still need to move the chains in that traditional way. So that's something that you're going to have to do. Those guys have to heal, and when I say, I'm not saying that they're unhealthy. They just need to heal as a unit and play so much better if this team is going to have any chance of advancing, and it's got to be a strength. So that's the big thing. So the other burning question, we talked about the threat level, and we were all across the board on it. I actually didn't really get any reds, but the other burning question would be at this point, Mason Rudolph. Look, I think the fan base trusts this guy. I actually think the organization trusts this guy, but they're bringing him along so slowly at this point. And they got to get to the point where they can go ahead and test that defense, go ahead and throw that ball deep to soften things up. So defenses aren't bringing 8 men up in the box. That's very important. So if he could go ahead and do that, get some of these guys open, do that early, it's going to make his life a whole lot easier. Hey, I'll take 24 for 28 all day long, but it's not going to work against Baltimore as well as it's going to work against a Cincinnati team. Now, Baltimore's defense is not nearly as bad as the Cincinnati Bengals, but they're not a top 10 unit like we've seen in so many times before. We're so used to Baltimore year after year just being a dominant unit, and that's something that at this point they're not a dominant unit. So you've got to see what Mason can do to go ahead and spread things out on these guys, and to make them tired. Control the ball, make that a tired team, and that's something they were able to do the other night against Cincinnati. If they can continue to do that and kind of flip the script, a lot of people do that to the Steelers, make that defense tired. I think that would be something that would be really beneficial to this team, and that's something that could go ahead and happen. So, I really think that this team is trusting in Mason Rudolph, and that's something that, if you remember, they back in time. Let's go back to 2004, that glory season, that 15-1 season with Ben Roethlisberger as a rookie. They kind of brought him along slow too. You got to keep in mind, this is the man's 3rd career start. Slowly, you watched Ben getting more opportunities to whip the ball downfield. So this is a situation where Mason Rudolph could really grow his resume. He could do so much better if he can just rack up some yards on this team. I'm going to go ahead and bring up just a comment from Snowman here. I'll bring it on the board. The Ratbirds defense has given up 1,000 yards in the last 2 games, and both games they lost. So the question is, though, are we in a situation right now where the Steelers are capable of putting up 5 TDs? Because they didn't put up 5 TDs. They put up 3 TDs against a very bad Cincinnati defense, as far as I'm concerned. So that's something that you need to do. Excuse me. When I'm saying 5 TDs, I meant 1,000 yards, 500 yards. So is this a 500-yard team? So we'll just have to see, because the Steelers are not a Chiefs team. They are not that caliber of team and that caliber of defense. And that caliber of offense, excuse me. And the Browns offense with Odell Beckham, and they really, with Nick Chubb, they really ran all over this team. So, as far as everything goes, we'll just have to see what they're capable of doing. We're going to see how innovative this game plan is. But I'm going to go back to the original burning question. I think the threat level is still pretty high because you have to win it. I'm still keeping it at orange. Part of me actually wants to say red, but the bottom line to it, you got to go ahead and win this game. And this team is starting to remind me of a team that can start winning games like this if they could just make some little tweaks and pull everything together. This is not a situation where you have to go ahead and tear everything down. You don't have to start over. You just have to make those tweaks. They have some really exciting things going. I'm going to call them the killer Vs. You've got Vance and Vanette, if they go ahead and play. You have a secondary that's looking so much better, probably the best that they've had in years with this team, and it's starting to get a whole lot better. But you've got to have a statement game. Like Bo says, you've got to go out and go ahead and really, you can't fall to 1-4. So that's why it is such a big deal. So what I'm going to do is, in the few minutes we have left here, I'm going to go ahead, open it up to any questions. We'll go ahead and do that. And feel free, if you do want to go ahead and use the super chat, that puts money in the queue. And what it does, and we call it the tip jar, and that gives us an opportunity to go ahead and give away some goodies. We gave away last week. We gave away tickets to the Cincinnati game, that Monday Night Football game. We also have a contest that's still running for the David DeCastro football. No, I'm not putting up the Finny pants, but the team keeps on going. And we get enough in the tip jar. Maybe the Finny pants will go up there someday. I don't know. And if you don't know about the BJ Finny pants, I'm sure that we can go ahead and get you up to speed with everybody else on the live chat, because I have a pair of pants worn by BJ Finney in action that I actually bought from the Steelers. So that's interesting. And the other thing I'm going to bring up is I realize that I have been, just blabbering for 28 minutes with nonstop. And I have probably, the over under on me using the word situation is probably over, because I've used situation so many times. So when I go back and listen to it, probably going to count. It's probably over 10 at this point. So that's something I'm working on as well. But so let's go ahead and look at some questions here. Let's start off with Donald Nolan. Any chance they bring up Tevin Jones from practice squad if they get rid of Moncrief? That's not actually the worst idea in the world. I am still in favor of giving Moncrief a chance, but the bottom line to the whole Moncrief thing is you want to protect that 3rd round pick that you would get from getting rid of him because of the whole Le'Veon Bell thing, and with LJ Fort being out. With the Eagles, even though he's hooked on with another team, that means that they would not be eligible for that pick. Glenn Altergott, Brian, what do you think of Mark Barron? Well, if you asked me after the San Francisco game, I would have been really concerned about Mark Barron. 11 tackles the other night, getting beaten by Tyler Eifert and coming back to knock that ball away on that first series to keep them to their only points of that field goal very early in the game was huge. Mark Barron is not going to be Devin Bush and what he can be in the future, but he could be a very valuable player for this team. He could be a very piece of the puzzle of this team. I think they're in it to win it with a guy like Mark Barron, and I'm glad to see 2-6 out there. That 2-6, that's the guy I want to see. He brings a lot of valuable experience. He is a former first-round pick. Very good player as far as I'm concerned. But he had a horrible game in San Francisco, but playing much better. Cousin Dave, do you think the Steelers can mirror what the Browns did to the Ravens? It depends on the running game. I'll tell you that. We don't have a Nick Chubb right now, and the reason we don't have a Nick Chubb is because the offensive line has not been up to par. But here's the interesting thing about it. The Steelers have a much better offensive line than that of the Cleveland Browns. So if they could put some things together, then they're going to be in a lot better shape. My favorite all-time Steeler and why from Snowman. That's $2 into the tip jar. Wow. You know what? This probably changes a whole heck of a lot. A lot of people know that I'm from Johnstown, so Jack Ham has always been a favorite of mine. I will go back and forth all the time. If I were to go eras, I would probably say that on offense, it's probably still going to be, to this point, John Stallworth, because that's the guy that, I grew up with in the 70s, but he was still around late into the 80s. And one of my favorite years is 1984. I absolutely love that team, the team that went to, they were 9-7. Weren't a good team, but Louis Lips was a rookie, and John Stallworth had a season for the ages after being out all of 1983. And I just have some special memories of Johnny Stallworth. So on offense, I'd say that would be my guy. Jack Ham on defense, but I'm a big Mel Blount guy as well. If we go into the 90s, man, I was a Rod Woodson guy. I was a big fan of Greg Lloyd as well. But if I had to say my favorite of all time, I'd probably have to say still Heinz Ward. The guy just brought it back for us. He's the guy who helped make it happen and bring those Super Bowls back to us. I know Ben did, and a lot of guys did, but I'd probably say Heinz. Now, next week, I might have a completely different Steeler for you. I have so many that I'm very fond of. Tough question. You don't even realize how tough that question that is for me. I mean, another guy, Mike Webster. Gosh, I'm a huge Mike Webster fan, and his story is a tough one. Alex Flores asks, what will be the key to the defense this week? Really stopping that running game. That's the bottom line to it. Shadowing Lamar Jackson, stopping Mark Ingram, and the secondary has a lot to do with that as well. If they could just stop the passing game and make them rely more on the run and just stop them. Who would I bring back? Heinz Ward, Stallworth, or Louis Lips? All right. You know what? That's interesting because if you bring back 1984 Louis Lips, 1985, 84, 85, around that time, that guy was just a demon on special teams as well. Just, as a return man, he can make things happen. Heinz Ward was the heart of that team with the blocking, and he was just a clutch guy. Stallworth was a big play guy. Could we combine them all into one? I doubt it. Do I have to answer that question? And since there's not a tip jar on that, I guess I'm just going to cop out, and I'm not going to answer that question. Who's going to be the key to the defense this week? Alex asks, I think it continues to be TJ Watt. That guy, to me, is the heart and soul of the defense right now. You're getting some great play out of Stephon Tuitt. You're getting some elevated play out of the defense, the defensive backs now. Minka is making things happen a lot. You're seeing a lot of things happen as far as Devin Bush as well. So I'm going to say TJ Watt, but I'm going to have a B in there. I'm going to have one more guy that I'll bring up, and that's Vinny Williams. If he plays, and it looks like he's going to go ahead and play in this game, he's crucial to that team stopping the run. I know he's a liability in coverage, but you know what? Some of the faster guys that do well in coverage are liabilities against the run. Devin Bush is getting much better from it. So, I think Vince Williams is important, but if TJ Watt is disrupting like he has shown that he's done all year long, he's going to be a very special all-time player for this team if he keeps that going. This is not a question. I've got to bring it up. And love the name Suplex Tyler. I'm from Johnstown. Love to know more about that. I'm a Richland High graduate of 1989. So, I did get back to, I actually got a little behind here, but what's my pick for the game? I'm going to go with my original pick with a ridiculous score of 22-19. How do you get there? I can see the Steelers going for a 2-point conversion if they get up early. So that's I'm starting to waver from that, but I gotta remain consistent. So I'll go 22-19, but the Steelers win that game. What do I think of the chances of Nelson getting his first pick against the Ravens? I could see that happening. But in my bold and bizarre predictions that I'm going to have tomorrow come out, I've actually the pick that I'm looking at is going to come from Terrell Edmunds. That's the guy I'm thinking of, but I tell you what, Steven Nelson has a great opportunity to go ahead and do that as well. So here's an interesting thing. So let's just go ahead and bring this up. Let's not act like this team with Big Ben should be winning. So if Steelers can't win with Mason, he isn't the answer. Move on. Well, sure. Let's give them a little bit of time, and I really think that they're going to find that they can win with a player like this. I'm going to bring this up, and this is something that I'm really proud of as I look through the live chat, because here's a commenter that I greatly respect, and I respect all of our commenters, but here's one who never agrees with me, and I'm going to bring it up because he actually agrees with me this time. And one of my favorite commenters, Dennis, he agrees, but he'd still say our whole front line, since we need to shut their rush down, is the key. But that's the first time I think that Dennis has ever agreed with me. So thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that. And hey, I have no problem when anybody disagrees with me, because I'm not right half the time either. So in fact, if I'm right a quarter of the time, I'd probably appreciate that. With that being said, we're coming up on the 40-minute mark, and I thank everybody for hanging out with me today. It's so fun to go ahead and read the comments, go ahead and do this show. I am so used to having the crutch of being able to be on the show with Tony, being on the show with Dave, and all of those guys to get a little breather, to throw things off, and just try to be the funny guy. But this week, I feel that I had a lot of fun with you guys. So thank you so much. For BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. My name is Bryan Anthony Davis, and we've all together just answered that burning question. It's going to be a great one tomorrow. Go Steelers. We'll see you next week, and let's hope for a good one. Take care.